Hey guys, we're going to begin our first section of our next chapter, chapter 22, the Progressive Era. I want to start off by making sure that you guys all have a copy of this sheet. Okay, I have it holding up right here. You're going to need this sheet as we go through the activity today, so please have that. If you don't have that, download it from Edmodo. So first I want to talk about our essential question, and this is what you're going to hopefully get out of today's little lesson. What kind of problems did progressives attempt to solve? So that's what you're going to try to figure out as we go through this together today. Also, our objectives. One, you're going to hopefully be able to understand what the progressive movement tried to accomplish. And additionally, you're going to try to identify specific reforms achieved during the progressive era. And I think we will be able to do this together. So before we really get going, I want to take a look at this word progressive. And why is this era called the progressive era? So again, if you look at the root word in the word progressive, you will see the word progress. Okay, so what does it mean to make progress, right? I'm sure you guys have some ideas about that. And there's actually a company called Progressive. You might have heard of it. They use car insurance. Let's take a look at their video and see why do you think they chose the name Progressive? Bear with me a second as I cue that up.
Hi, welcome to Progressive.com. How can I help you?
Well, I haven't shopped for car insurance in a while.
And you're worried that you've been paying too much, right?
Yeah. So how can I know I'm getting a good deal?
We can compare your Progressive Direct rate with other top companies.
Wow. Seriously?
Yeah. Look at the deal we just got him.
That's a new pair of shoes.
Yeah, or a big tricked out name tag.
Making sure you get a great deal. Now that's Progressive.
Making sure you get a great deal. Now that's progressive. So the company's saying, we will make sure that you get a great deal, whether it's with us or with someone else. We're going to show you what we would charge you for car insurance, and we're going to show you what everybody else would charge you. And if somebody else is going to charge you less, then go get car insurance from them. And that's a really progressive idea if you think about it. And they've named their company Progressive to say that they're not like everyone else. They're different. They want change. They want to change the way it is. So let's first talk about this big question. Progressivism. This is a definition you need to know. Progressivism was a reform movement to fix the problems in society. Well, what problems? Well, there are three big problems, okay? We have political problems, we have social problems, we have economic problems. And we're also going to talk about environmental problems as well. So we don't want to hate on the environment, let's take a look for that. And these are reforms, okay? I have the reform button up there to say we're fixing, we're reforming, we're moving forward. So take a look at these pictures real quick and think to yourself, what social issues do we need to reform or fix at this time period? Okay, hopefully you've come up with some of those issues in your mind. Okay, take a look at this one. What political or economic issues do you think we can reform at this time? So hopefully you've come up with some ideas of, in the past, what we've talked about in chapter 21 with immigration, how more immigrants are coming to the U.S. and we are industrializing and we're growing as a country, but now we have some problems. Okay, specifically if we go back, some social problems: child labor, sweatshops, factory conditions, long hours, tenements, political and economic issues, trusts, monopolies, political problems, right? We talked about this guy down here, Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall, political machines. So we see a time period where Americans say, we need to fix these problems. So again, the progressives have three goals. And what we're going to do together is, as I said, keep this sheet out, because as we go through, we're going to start with the political reform movements. And as we kind of go through this together, you should be writing this stuff down. Okay? So progressive goal number one, reform the government and expand democracy. Here's what we have. The first thing you might want to write down on that sheet is patronage. Patronage is giving jobs to friends in governments or business. And unfortunately, what you can't see is that cartoon on the bottom there says, thanks for creating 100 jobs. The problem is you've given them all to family and friends. So this cartoon, the quote's actually off the screen, and as I get a little better at this, guys, I'll make sure that this is fixed. But this guy basically here gave 100 jobs to family and friends. Okay, that is called patronage. Who says that these guys, these family and friends, are the best people for the job? In fact, they're probably not. So this is a problem that we're having about the turn of the century, where politicians are given all their BFFs basically jobs. So what we see is a reform movement, and it's called the Pendleton Civil Service Act. Anytime you see the word act, you guys know that means it was an act of Congress. I know that you know that. So basically what the Pendleton Civil Service Act did is it said, if you want a government job, you got to pass a test, okay, a basic exam. It was called the Civil Service Exam. In fact, me, being a teacher, I work in the civil service industry, meaning I work for the public. I educate public children like you guys. I had to take a test to make sure that I was capable to teach you guys. It was called a civil service test. It was a teaching exam, right? You just can't give anyone a job. So this is a new reform called the Pendleton Civil Service Act. So again, on your sheet, if you'd write down Pendleton Civil Service Act, that'd be great, as well as patronage. Another reform movement, something called a direct primary. Direct primary means that citizens choose who they want to run for president. Okay, so not this past election, but the election past, there was a huge issue because you had Barack Obama and you had Hillary Clinton, both running for the Democratic Party. Well, lo and behold, you guys know that Barack Obama won that direct primary because he was the one that was nominated for president. Well, how did Barack Obama get there? Well, American people vote on who they want to run for president. That's called a direct primary. Direct primary came about because of the Progressive era. If it wasn't for the Progressive era, we would not have direct primaries. My question for you is, how did it happen before? Okay, I'm not going to give you that answer. I want you to try to figure that one out or think about, well, how did we elect these people before direct primaries? And we're going to talk about that in class. And also we're going to talk about the impact of, what impact do direct primaries now have on Americans? So we're going to keep those two for class, and we'll start class with that next time. More political reforms. Initiative. Initiative is basically giving voters the ability to propose a law directly. This could happen at the town level, at the state level, at the national level. One initiative was no smoking in public buildings. Okay, you guys might not realize this, but you are not allowed to smoke in public buildings in New York. Okay, when I was growing up, if you went into a diner or a restaurant, there would be an ashtray on the table. And when you first walked into a diner, the first thing the lady would say is, smoking or non-smoking? Well, now they don't ask you that anymore because you can no longer smoke in public buildings. And the reason being is because it started as an initiative. It was a group of people who said, I don't want to inhale smoke in public areas. We should pass a law. And it started as an initiative. Again, a very small group of people started this initiative, tried to get this law passed, and it went higher and higher and higher and went to the state legislature and ended up being passed. Believe it or not, the lights on the track started as an initiative, okay? Another term you want to write down in that political box is referendum. Referendum is a proposed law that is voted on by people. And a perfect example of referendums are school budgets, okay? Every year, your parents vote, or should be voting, on how much money it's going to cost to run the school. It's called our budget, okay? The school proposes a budget. I'm not sure what the budget is, probably something like $50 million or something like that. That could be way off, that could be way down. I believe it's around $50 million is our school budget, between running the buildings, heating all the buildings, repairing all the buildings, shoveling snow, paying all the workers, all that stuff. It's a pretty big cost. Well, your parents every year vote on a referendum to say, do we want the school budget to be this high or not? And that's a direct vote they have. right? Prior to the Progressive Era, there was no such thing as a referendum. People didn't get a say. So it's giving people more say in government. Viking Stadium, another great example. Your parents voted on Viking Stadium. That was also a referendum. So after it was proposed, your parents voted on it to say, do you want to spend X number of dollars on Viking Stadium, on making stands, on putting an AstroTurf field, the whole lights and all that fun stuff. Recall. Finally, this is another interesting political reform to come about during the Progressive Era. A recall allows voters to vote an official out of office. Okay? There was recently, this guy over here, his name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. You might know him as the Terminator. Okay? This guy here, a few years back, was voted into office because the governor was so bad that he was recalled out, meaning there was a vote to actually get the guy who was voted in out. Okay, and that's called a recall. We can actually recall local officials as well. So again, this is giving more voice to people. So something like this would be, what about that guy Boss Tweed? Remember that guy Boss Tweed, a really bad guy? Well, now, Boss Tweed, if he was elected, could now get recalled, right? Just because Boss Tweed wins the election doesn't mean he's the guy. Now there's a recall that can happen. So again, it's helping promote democracy. All right, this is the last thing we're going to talk about in this short video. We have about another 4 minutes left. The second goal for progressives was promoting the social welfare of people. And what that means is basically helping citizens. And in what areas do citizens need help? Well, a lot of people are poor. There's employment issues, poor working conditions, low pay, child labor, right? We talked about all of these things. So now we're going to fix it. And one group of people who are going to try to fix it are these people called muckrakers. You must know who muckrakers are and what they do. So muckrakers were writers and photographers and people who tried to expose corruption in American society. And basically through their efforts, the public started to demand reform. The American people said, we need to fix this. Okay, this is a famous picture here by Lewis Hine. All right, his name is Lewis Hine. It's showing basically this is what children are doing with their days. We need an educational law passed to fix this, to help these kids. We talked about Jacob Riis, right? That book was called How the Other Half Lives, right? We talked about that. Life in tenements and things like that. Nellie Bly is another muckraker. You will read about her in your textbook. She basically was a newspaper journalist that pretended to be a lunatic, like crazy, out of her mind, like nuts, and to expose the fact that when crazy people went to what were called insane asylums, they were mistreated, they were choked and beaten and stuff like that. So basically she pretended to be crazy, got locked up, was choked, beaten, and then wrote an article about it to try to expose her, to fix it. Here are some more famous pictures by Lewis Hine. Okay, he was a famous photographer, he was a muckraker. Again, you could see these pictures. We'll look more about these in class, but again, child labor issues, right? He was saying this is not right. This should not be the case, right? Again, kind of shows you what was going on in American society. Another very famous picture about Lewis Hine. Again, where's the safety equipment here? This is a famous picture from the building of the Empire State Building. But notice, zero safety equipment, right? Might be a little bit of a problem. And also we've talked about Jane Addams. Okay, Jane Addams, again, social reform. She wanted to help poor people. She started settlement houses like the Hull House, and we've discussed this before. So again, all of these things you should be writing in that social column, these peoples and these things. Another social issue that tried to get changed during this time period was called the temperance or prohibition movement. This was a movement to outlaw alcohol. In fact, for a time period in American history, alcohol was illegal, and it was thought that alcohol was ruining people's lives, and that if we outlawed it, it would help the social lives of Americans. So that was then also a social goal. We're not going to get into the economic reforms right now. We're going to save that for another time. So again, if you want to, go back through the video, make a bulleted list, get those things written down in these areas, because we're going to use this to discuss in class next time. Okay, so again, if you don't have this, check out Edmodo. It will be posted on Edmodo. You can download that, but please use that as you can. We'll see you guys in class. Thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to doing more of these.